Hey guys, and welcome to Whisper Creek Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, home of Sean Gregory and Signal Fire. Welcome also to Keys Playback Circuit, my YouTube and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram to follow along. I'm going to walk you through a stage rack build for a new playback rig and a playback server that I built alongside Sean, who handled a lot of the other stuff, including the in-ears and the X32 interface and the stage snake that we were building. It was a great time because Sean wanted to put a new snake in there and reroute some of the stuff into our audio interface. And we wanted to also upgrade a playback rig that was in our stage rack that I can control or the drummer can control anywhere on stage. If you're confused on any of this, or if you want to dive in more, this was all inspired by Will Doggett from Studio to Stage. His new Future Rig framework is out on his website, and this is taking all of the concepts that he teaches there and putting them to use for our benefit on stage. So shout out to Will, thank you. But let's dive in. So I'll press play here. And once again, this is the nice studio that we'll walk in here to. Thankfully, I had a lot of space to work with. As you can see, that's the main room, and then I did some work in the side room over here. This is going to all the stuff. So I'll pause this right here. So we have two Mac Minis. We have a Play Audio 1U, which is arguably the brain of everything. Redundant interface, automatic failover using a life sine tone. I think it is 12 XLR outputs, if I'm not mistaken, 12 XLR outputs, and also the ability to run different kinds of MIDI, 5-pin MIDI, USB host port, which also supports MIDI if you're using that. The biggest thing that I use is RTP MIDI, and that moves us to our network switch over here to the right. 16 port gigabit PoE network switch. I hope I said all that right. I'm not an IT professional, but 16 ports, and it gives us 120 watts of PoE power, more than enough than we need for what we're going to be using. And we probably won't even use more than 8 ports on that, but why not get 16 gigs? I had a whole rack space that I could use for it, so I went ahead and got that. And you can even daisy chain other network switches from that, but it wasn't much more expensive than going with an 8 port, so I was like, we might as well go for it. A couple different cables, some patch cables down there, Ethernet gigabit patch cables. I believe that is a USB-C, an Ethernet to USB-C adapter that we only used for this because my Red Park adapter did not show up on time. And then in the other box is a Sonnet Mac Mini rack mount. We went with, I believe, their 2022s or 2023s M2 Mac Minis over getting brand new 2024 M3 Mac Minis because those Mac Minis are 2 units of space, which sucks. I hope that Apple goes back to a Mac Mini being 1 unit of space. In our setup, if we had to use 2 units of rack space, we probably would have had to buy another rack. You'll see later. Here's me opening up the new Ableton Live licenses, getting the computers ready. Here's all the network switch gear all laid out. A Wi-Fi router that's using DHCP to run all the IP addresses, which is nice.
Let's go, baby.
I just wanted to pause right there because Sean and I are about to build the new rack. There's another smaller 6-unit rack, and that's my old rack, and it used to stay by me by my keyboards, and my 2 laptops would be right there on top of that rack with a Play Audio 12, and we would have to run lines from that Play Audio 12 to our Snake to front of house. Right now, the benefit is that I don't have to have laptops next to me. I don't have to have a small little rack next to me. All the playback stuff lives in our stage rack. What's even better is that we take 3-foot XLR cables from the Play Audio 1U into our stage Snake, which is in the same rack, and then from there they go to front of house. So we don't even have to worry about plugging in our inputs from our tracks rig into our stage Snake at each show. It just stays like that. So super helpful. And it doesn't matter if I'm 50 feet away from the rack up to 300 feet away from the rack. I can run an Ethernet cable from our stage rack to wherever I'm at on stage. I can control it. I have MIDI pads on my keyboards that I can control press, play, previous, next. I'm running AbleSet, so I can use an iPad to control it, or I can have a MacBook Air next to me, which is my computer. And if I want that option, I can use that and have a computer next to me on stage. But the whole point of this was to get computers away from me and for kind of tracks to be in the background, where people don't see computers next to me and wonder why I'm looking at the computer the whole time.
Let's go. I think that's it. I hope so. We find out.
So I paused right here. We got everything in the rack how we wanted it. At the very bottom, we have a stage snake. I believe it's 28 inputs, and that's a 1-to-1 split. So one side goes to the X32, which is at the very top of the rack, and that's our in-ear monitor console. And then the other goes and it sends a draw signal to front of house, and they can take that and do whatever they want with it at front of house to make us sound good. And then in the middle, right under the X32, is kind of a universal rack mount, and that has a network switch, the 16 port switch on that, along with the power supply. And then from there, we have A and B labeled on the rack, Sonic Rack Mac Mini mount. That's a lot to say. And those are where our two computers live. Super protective, say there was a little bit of rain that got on them, they're in that case, which is very nice. And then under that is the Play Audio 1U, again, the brains of the operation. And you can see the two USB-C cables plugged into those. Those are from the Mac Minis. And then under that, we have a power conditioner. That is super straightforward, just plugs in all of our stuff, so we don't have to plug in 10 different things. Once we get to the venue, we just plug in one line, and everything else gets power from there. So here's my Mac Mini, and this is screen sharing to Playback A and B. Not sure which one it is on currently in that frame, but it's screen sharing. So Ableton is not pulled up on the computer itself, it's just screen sharing. And you can see I have a USB-C hub, and that's plugged into the Ethernet line, which from there is plugged into that 16 gigabit PoE network switch. And the Mac Minis are both plugged into that network switch. So that's how I can have a wired screen sharing connection. And again, the Wi-Fi router is doing all of the IP address routing because it has DHCP. So I don't have to worry about any of that. I just know that I have a stable wired screen share connection. And the nice thing about the wireless router is that if I do decide to go wireless, like say I'm in the green room backstage and I want to make edits, then I can just quickly grab my MacBook and hop on that Wi-Fi network. Even if it doesn't have internet on it, I can still access the network wirelessly, make my edits backstage, and then I'm good to go. And I've actually done that, which is super nice. I'll be 50 feet away from the stage rack, and I'll hop on there wirelessly, make my edits before I go on stage if I have to, and then I'll be good to go. So that way I don't have to go out in front of the crowd on stage or next to the stage and make edits there, and kind of keeps that element of surprise in the back, which is super cool. One more note, I would never trust a wireless network connection for screen sharing live. I would never trust any kind of wireless connection if you're going to use that only live. I would always make sure that you have some kind of wired connection to fire your tracks to access your computers. So right here we put in our IEMs. We have one wireless receiver that's for Sean's guitar pack, so he has a wireless guitar pack and he can move around on stage how he wants. And then we have 3 G4 Sennheisers, and 2 of those we are using as mono left and right. So we have 2 packs per one of those units. That way we don't have to buy a whole nother unit. Eventually we do want to go to stereo mixes, but then that'll require us to get a couple more of those G4 units on top of. We're going to upgrade from the X32 to, I believe it's the M32 by Midas, and that'll give us some more auxiliary outputs to go to stereo mixes. For now, mono mixes, not too bad. Definitely an upgrade from wedges, but that's how we run things for the time being. So from top to bottom, super clean. We can put our Wi-Fi router and our MacBook screen share on top. Everything lives in the rack. It is heavy to carry. I'll tell you that it definitely is a lot more heavy than it was before. Here's the back of it. A mess of cables. I know we cleaned it up. I don't think I got any footage of after we cleaned it up, unfortunately, but I promise to you that we did clean it up as much as we can. To some degree, things are going to be a bit messy. I find that if you have everything plated up and everything the exact length, cables trimmed down to the exact length, when you're trying to troubleshoot things, it can be a little difficult at that point. So I don't really mind the mess as long as we have everything labeled on there that we need to have labeled. And Sean and I both know exactly, because we built this rack together, we both know exactly what goes where. So with that, if we need to troubleshoot something, we have things labeled, we know where they go. But it kind of beats having everything nice and neat. Even though it may look good, it may not always be the best when you need to figure out something in 30 seconds and you have to unscrew a back plate to get into a connection. Whereas the connection's right there and you can troubleshoot real easily.